and welcome back, everyone. We are the Weary Writers. I'm Alex, and I live in Los Angeles, California.
And I'm Jay Lawrence, and I live in Berlin. And today we are going to talk about resistance when it comes to our writing. But before we get into that heavy topic, Alex, I want to know how you did on your goals last week.
Well, speaking of resistance to our writing, my goals last week were to get some words on the page, along with rewatching Troy, which I still have yet to get to, so I failed that goal as well. But yeah, I didn't do any writing, but that doesn't necessarily mean I didn't get words on the page, because I'm looking at our notes from last week. I specifically wrote get words on page. I didn't say that I was going to write prose necessarily, and I did get words on the page. You know this because we actually had a chat on Monday that was like an hour long, and thank you for that, by the way. So what I did instead of like actually drafting was I worked the shit out of my planning and going over my world building and like end game stuff for the series. Our little talk on Monday was hugely helpful for that. So that was one of my sessions of just like planning and all of that. And then I had another planning session. I was at work and my kiddos were just doing homework, so I had nothing to do. So I planned and I worked on my story. And I don't think it really helped necessarily so far as like furthering the plot, but it helped so far as like seeing all of my plot holes in the story. And so yeah, so I physically wrote. I wrote in my notebook. I didn't draft, but I did get words on page.
You got work done. Words are words.
I got work done. Words are words. I know. I'm always telling you that words are words that you didn't have before. So I need to remind myself of that fact. How did you do though? How did your goals go?
Right. So my goals that I set last week were for editing my anthology, which I have been working on for ages. And there's a reason that this anthology has taken me ages, and I did not get very far in it. I managed to open my manuscript every day. And so that was the first step. But I didn't get much further than that. I was facing some pretty tough resistance this week. So I think this is kind of the perfect week to do this topic.
Right.
Because I'm suffering from it. Yeah, I got 0 pages edited.
Well, then on that note, let's dive right in. Resistance to writing. So first off, can you explain a little bit what exactly is resistance to writing?
So resistance in general is just the pushback that we feel in our lives when we are trying to do hard things that help us to grow. And it can pop up in any area of life. If we're trying to live healthier, go to the gym, if we want to learn a new skill or start a business or writing a book, because hey, resistance pops up when we do hard things, and writing is hard.
Writing is hard.
Yes. So resistance keeps us from sitting down at our desks, and it keeps us from opening our manuscripts, and it's basically based on fear. It's what makes us reach for those distractions that like social media or like binge watching television. But these fears are kind of common. The fear that you're not really a writer, or that you're a bad writer, the fear like imposter syndrome, the fear that you're not the right person for a particular story, like you've mentioned in the past on the show, fear of failure or fear of success, fear of how long it'll take to finish a project or how hard it's going to be to complete the project. So basically, it's just fear of achieving what we want to achieve. So I've known you for a long time, and I know that resistance is something that you struggle with as much as I do. But with that explanation of resistance being linked to fear in mind, I want to know when you feel the resistance most, and in what ways does it manifest for you?
I think one of the most prominent times that I experience resistance to my writing is when I'm first experiencing writer's block, because they are two different things. So to me, writer's block is when you just can't think of what to put on the page. Like you are motivated to do your writing, but you're stuck and you don't know where the story goes from there. So when that's happening for me, then I start to feel the demotivation for writing. And that's when all of the negative thoughts start creeping into my head, like, oh, maybe I'm having writer's block because I am a bad writer, because I'm not the right person to do the story. That's when I start feeling the imposter syndrome and everything else. So that's definitely one of the times when it really starts to settle in and I start hearing hearing all those awful little voices in my head. I think another time when I'm experiencing resistance to my writing as well is just when I am burnt out on everything else and I'm just physically drained. Like maybe I do know what to write with my story and I just don't want to do it. Like if I have already written a lot that week, or if I, have just had some sort of big push with writing or with, making progress with a plot or something, even though you would think that progress would lead to more progress, sometimes it doesn't. And sometimes it does lead me to just feeling burnt out and like, I don't want to do this. I'm not motivated to do this at all. I don't necessarily always recognize, oh, hey, I'm experiencing resistance to my writing. But I think like I'll have these certain things that I do that kind of clue me into it and clue me into the mindset that I'm in. So like I'll start doing things like sleeping in a lot more than I normally do, or my apartment will be exceptionally clean because I'll start cleaning, because I start doing all of those activities that I normally do to avoid writing. Like I will just do anything else aside from writing.
Anything that's easier than sitting down and doing the work.
Yeah, that's exactly what it is. It's doing something that you feel, where I can feel a sense of accomplishment, like especially with the cleaning and especially with like doing laundry or cooking a new recipe, whatever it is, like those things I can feel like that very quick hit of I did something today, I accomplished something. And it's not related to writing because it takes a lot more for me to feel that sense of accomplishment in my writing. And it's one of those things that's very delayed gratification. And so when I'm not really feeling that gratification, I'll just, fuck off and do something that will give me that gratification because I'm not motivated. What about you? In what ways does resistance, when do you usually start to feel it, and what ways does it manifest for you?
So I usually feel it when I'm at the beginning of projects because the way that my brain works, and I'm a very strategic thinker. So I'm thinking about all of the different components and all of the outcomes and all of the work that it's going to go into a project. And so I think that it's just creates this crippling fear of everything that I need to do, and I need to figure it all out right now in the very beginning. And so I'm paralyzed to even start because of my perception of it. And so that can be at the start of a draft, or it can be at the start, for example, right now of a round of revision. I can look at my table of contents for all of my short stories, and just looking at them gives me anxiety because I know all of the things that need to go into each story and how much work each story needs. And so I haven't been able to get to the actual work.
It's daunting.
Because it's daunting. And it is much easier to do the things that will be that instant gratification that you were talking about. So the ways that it manifests for me are very similar to you. I nap a lot during the day, big napper. I'm also a cleaner when I should be writing. But another thing that I do and that I notice is that I'm very high communication. So I will go to my writing community and just talk, just about anything. But it's a form of distraction and procrastination for me.
Yeah.
Because I could spend, half an hour to an hour in a conversation with somebody who I like, and it's not that conversation is impacting me in a negative way, but it is taking up time and energy that I know that I should be putting towards my manuscript. And so then afterwards, the guilt sets in.
Oh, yeah, it does.
That I haven't been, and all of those bad words like should and shouldn't come into my mind. Like
should is terrible
writing. Yeah. And so it's a vicious cycle, but anything that is worth doing is hard. And pushing past the resistance and finding a way to overcome it is critical if we want to live this creative life and produce the works that we want.
Yeah, it definitely is. So on that note, what do you do? What are some things that you do to first recognize that resistance and push through it so that you can get your shit done? What are some of your strategies?
I try out new strategies all the time to see what's going to work for me. And some strategies work for a little while, then the resistance finds a way around it to get back in my face. Just today, actually, I watched a great video by Becca Syme, and she was talking about how to minimize and ultimately get past that fear threshold, which is how the resistance manifests for me in the beginning of a project. And to do that, breaking what to me seems like this giant mountain of problems and work into smaller, very manageable tasks. Like, for example, what I was working on this week was just opening my manuscript, taking that very first step and trying to chip away at it in smaller chunks instead of trying to take everything on at the same time.
Yeah.
And also something that I found that's been successful for me is a lot of people will say, do the hardest thing first, eat your vegetables first, that sort of mentality. That doesn't work for me. I feel like I get very defeated when I try to do the hardest thing first. For example, if in my collection, I have one story, which I know is going to take a lot more work and be a lot harder than some of the other stories, I'm going to save that and do a story that I feel is in a good place, but needs a little bit more polishing so that I can easily get that accomplishment.
Yes.
And get that gratification quicker.
Absolutely.
And build up a little bit of momentum so that I can go up against the harder thing with a little bit more confidence.
It's like what financial advisors say when you have different types of debt, like the snowball effect. You pay off the smallest one first, and then you use that payment and to pay off the next one, and then you just keep going till you're debt free.
Yeah, because you have sort of like finishing energy from tasks, and that energy can roll over and help you with the harder tasks. Another strategy that I use is I try to have external accountability as much as I can, because for me it's much more motivating than my own accountability, which is basically nil.
Yeah, exactly.
What about you? What are some of your strategies?
So, I mean, similar to you, I think opening up your notebook, looking at the work that you have already done is huge, because like you were saying, in the beginning of a project or even in the middle, it can still seem like a super daunting task. Like, I have this mountain of work that I need to get done. How am I ever going to surpass it? But opening up your notebook and seeing what you've already done, that's hugely helpful for me, because it reminds you the little voice in your head that's telling you you can't do it is full of shit, because you're seeing the proof that that's not true. You're seeing that you can do it. You have already done it. Even if you're starting a new project, look at the most recent project that you finished and read some of your past writing and see, oh, hey, I've already done this before. I don't know why I'm getting so caught up in thinking that I can't do this, because I've already done it. So that really helped me. One piece of advice that I had read during Nano that I haven't implemented yet, but I definitely really want to implement, I think it was called something about the procrastination method. So it's for people who really like to procrastinate. If you're getting stuck on one story, if you're experiencing that writing resistance to one story, write something else. Write the second most prominent project that you have in your head that you want to work on that instead. And when you start to experience the resistance to that story, go back to the first one. So really all you're doing is procrastinating writing with one story or the other, but you're getting work done 100% of the time.
I have heard that theory before.
I really like it. And I think it probably would have helped me a lot with Nano, because as I said in our very first video, I had this idea for a story days before Nano started, and I was so fucking excited about it. I was so excited about it that within 2 days, 2 days, I wrote 5,000 words of this story, which is way more than you would write in a typical nano day. So I was like ahead of the game on this story. I should have just stuck with it until I got stuck and then went back to my fantasy story, because even if I was alternating days and I didn't finish either of them by the end of nano, by the end of 2 months I could have had two stories with 50,000 words written in
So
both of them,
switching projects when you start to feel some serious resistance, so that you
Yeah.
can keep momentum.
The trick is, I know a lot of people would probably say, well, if you just did that, then you would have all of these works in progress that aren't finished. The trick is to find your way back to the original one you were working on. So that it can get a bit tricky, but at the same time, you're continuing to work. And I think, like you were saying, once you have momentum, it makes it a bit easier to push through some of the other blocks that you're having with other pieces of writing. So I think I'm going to put my fantasy series on hold this week and open up my vampire story and see what I can get done with that, because it's something that I was really excited about, and I felt like I was forced to put it down for the month of November. I had that should in my head. I shouldn't work on this. I should work on my other story. And I'm going to say screw that and open it back up and see what I can get done with it.
Yeah, I think that that's kind of the best way to combat resistance, is to try to find a way to be excited about whatever it is that you're resistant to, so that you can push through it.
Yeah. Finding
So whether
excitement
that's,
again.
yeah,
Big.
so whether that's, working on a project that's parallel to it, that you keep bouncing back and forth between, or if you're working on a longer piece, for example, and you're having resistance because you're having some sort of writer's block, or you're at the beginning, start in the middle, or start at the end, at the climax that you've been seeing in your head for months.
Exactly.
Anything to get the momentum started.
Yeah, we talked about writing out of order, writing fan fiction, if that helps to get you in the writer mindset, anything that's going to help you get words on the page so that you can have that feeling of accomplishment.
Yeah. And something that you said stuck with me as well, in terms of going back and looking at the progress that you've already made. And work that you've done that you are particularly proud of, as a way of showing yourself that you can do it. I actually keep a folder on my laptop of sentences and paragraphs that I've written, and they're not cohesive. They're from all of the different works that I've ever worked on.
Best of.
Yeah, it's like my best of. And like whenever I think, oh, that was good job, Jay, I just copy and paste it into there, so that when I'm having bad days, I can look back and be like, I can word sometimes.
I did a good thing. Yeah.
Exactly.
I like that a lot. Having a compilation of your best pieces of writing. That's really cute. I like that a lot.
Yeah, because we're always so quick to be critical of our writing, especially when we're in the drafting phase. Actually, especially when we're in the editing phase.
We're most critical of ourselves. No one is going to be as hard on you as you are on yourself.
Yeah. So I think it's also good sometimes to praise yourself and to be proud of yourself, because as we've been saying all episode, writing is hard. And it's really nice to remember and to see that we can do hard things.
Yeah. Because
hard things.
Because we can. We just sometimes forget it.
Exactly. So talking about doing hard things, what is your goal going into next week?
Yeah, I'm trying to think of like the timeline of the week too, because I think I travel by the end of this coming week. So the things that I want to get done before I travel, I think I want to get at least a full first chapter, because I was writing somewhere in the middle of my vampire story. I want to get the full first chapter. I want to realize it, and I want to write it in its entirety. And yeah, maybe work out a little bit of a plot. I think I already have kind of an outline of the story arc for the book as a whole, but maybe fine tune it just a little bit. But yeah, I think I want to get down the full chapter, which I think is definitely possible. I've got 7 days to do it, and it shouldn't be longer than 5,000 or 6,000 words. So I think that's a good goal for me to have. So putting the
That's doable.
fantasy story aside for now, which is a little painful, but I am excited for this new project. So I think that excitement is going to be my motivation for the next week. What about you? What are your goals going into next week?
So I actually have a commitment to my critique partner to get him 2 of my stories from the anthology by the 23rd. And these are going to be,
Accountability.
yes, yes. Which, by the way, having a critique partner has completely changed my productivity as a writer, because yeah, because he's on me when I'm not when I'm not working and when I'm not getting my stuff done. We spoke today, which is when he gave me the deadline of the 23rd, and I was explaining to him the same thing I was explaining to you about when I was looking at my table of contents, like feeling just that pressure of, just it, with one glance I could see all of the holes and all of the things that needed to be done. And so he walked me through each one. He's like, tell me what needs to be done in this one, and I would start to list it, and then I said, well, but actually that really doesn't need to be done, and maybe there's an easier way of changing this story a little bit so that it won't be as much work. And so by the end of it, just having somebody to talk it out with
Mhm.
was really helpful. And we agreed the 2 stories I would give him, one of them, like I was saying before, didn't need as much work, so I can start with that and get the positive reinforcement and get some momentum going. And
Yeah.
then the second one is going to be one of the harder ones, and it's going to be 52 pages total of editing, which
Mhm.
only comes out to about like 5.5 pages a day.
Totally doable.
So yeah, totally doable. So by the 23rd, I will have 52 pages edited.
I like it. I will see you the very next day so I can ask you, did you achieve your goal?
My gosh, so much external accountability. This is
gotta,
great.
you gotta be on it.
I do have to be on it. But you know what? I love it. I would rather have deadlines and people chasing me for things than to just watch the days go by and let the resistance win.
I think that's great advice. And that is a great note to end on. So thank you so much for joining me for this chat on writing resistance and how we can overcome it. And to everybody else out there who's working on whatever you're working on, we wish you happy writing.
Happy writing.